So this morning we have a special blessing to be joined by Sally Klein O'Connor. Sally, I met back in Los Angeles, where we were both living at the time. Since then, we both have moved away. Sally and her husband Michael and their family moved to Texas. We are obviously here. But Sally has a connection to New England, because for 6 years she lived in Boston, where she studied at Boston University, and then at Berklee College of Music, where she graduated. Not long after that, she became, I'm going to cut out, she can tell you more, but she became a follower of Yeshua. And then for some time, she led worship she was the music leader for a congregation where I was the rabbi, but at a different point in time. And I think we might have met before that once, but I remember during our 40th anniversary, we threw this special gala, and I asked Sally if she would come and share music, because we were trying to bring all the past leaders of the synagogue together, different people who were part of the community. And so I think that was the time we maybe had met before that, but I think that was the first real interaction. And since then, we had had a chance on where leaders from the local Messianic Jewish community in Los Angeles would get together on a regular basis, and I got to know her a little more. And you're going to hear her music, but not only I just want to say something. It's not just about Sally's music, which has been a blessing, and she's sang all over the world, but I've been really struck by her ministry of reconciliation, which she might talk about today with her tour of roses. And so I want to give us I want us to give Sally a really warm welcome, because I believe this is the first time that you've ever been with us. And so welcome, Sally. It's great to have you with us this morning.
Shabbat Shalom. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, if they'll seek me with all of their hearts and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and I'll forgive their sin. I'll turn my face back toward them, and I will heal their land. Oh God, my God, how great is the darkness when brothers betray each other. Oh God, my God, how deep the divide when filled with our hatred and pride. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, if they'll seek me with all of their hearts and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from turn my face back toward them, and I will heal their land. Oh God, my God, we've hardened our hearts, slow to forgive and dying to live. Oh God, my God, we've wandered away. Lord, bring us back now, we pray. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, if they'll seek me with all of their hearts and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and I'll forgive their sin. I'll turn my face back toward them, and I will heal their land. Then will I hear from heaven, and I'll forgive their sin. I'll turn my face back toward them, and I will heal their land. Well, I am going to share a little bit about myself and my walk with the Lord. And my husband and I were storytellers. And so the next song that I'm going to share is a story. And I like to think of it this way. I like to think that I think that all of us are born with dreams that God has knit into our DNA, that He's woven into everyone's DNA. And Ephesians talks about it in the 2nd chapter and says that these are the good works that He prepared in advance for us to do. Well, I think of them as dreams. And those dreams are in every single human being, but not all of them are ever always recognized. I mean, we have to walk with Him in order for that to happen, because they're not dreams that we dream on an earthly level. They're dreams that He knit into us to do with Him, you know, those good works that He prepared in advance for us to do. So this song is about that, and I think that all of us have those dreams in us, but sometimes the wounds that have happened in our lives get in the way of those dreams, and we don't experience that right away. But God is faithful. He's really faithful. And so what He starts, He finishes, and sometimes in interesting ways. He was just an old painter of houses. In his heart he was oh so much more. He dreamed of the galleries he'd someday fill as he touched up the trim round door. He was blessed with the heart of an artist, but cursed with a lumberjack's hands. He spoke in a language with brushes and oils the canvas could not understand. Now he had a way with the roller, and his pride in the workmanship spoke to the township whose homes he had covered, who saw life in simple broad strokes. He held up his hand so expansive and cried, Lord, it just isn't fair. Why can't I set down a skyline? Why can't I still life a pair? That night, God answered his prayer. You'll paint a sunset someday with colors that won't fade away. Be still and listen, I'll give you my vision, and you'll paint a sunset someday. But he didn't wait for God's leading, like an embryo skipping the womb. He went out and purchased supplies he would need, and for months locked himself in his room. He was tired of patience and wisdom, like a child determined to play. And the story in both local papers said his heart overcame him one day, not before he could hear someone say, you'll paint a sunset someday with colors that won't fade away. Be still and listen, I'll give you my vision, and you'll paint a sunset someday. The service was quite well attended. They came to say thanks and goodbye. When pressed for some personal stories, no one had much to supply. Then slowly a sad revelation, they felt deep conviction and cried for the man who had brightened their lives so, was never invited inside. I stood up and said I had known him, that I'd been his apprentice 2 years. And while we were sanding and prepping, he told me his dreams and his fears. I don't understand his obsession. All I know is James had true heart. It didn't matter that he lacked the talent. It didn't bother him, he wasn't smart. With these words, the Lord set him apart. You'll paint a sunset someday with colors that won't fade away. Be still and listen, a hilltop with luscious green sod. We went there to honor an artist. We went there to be close to God. We focused our solemn attention on the unfolding Polaroid skies. I saw hues which had never been blended, dancing dreams on a canvas of cries. In that moment, impossible beauty was the tender which purchased our hearts. In the receding skyline, I swear I saw this sunset by James Leonard Parks. He was just an old painter of houses, but he left me with more than a trade. I turned in my brush for a hammer and saw construction pays better these days. And I hear through the dawn's early rays, you'll build a kingdom someday, with souls that won't fade away. Be still and listen, I'll give you my vision, and you'll build a kingdom someday. So I grew up in Los Angeles, in a Jewish part of town, Fairfax, on Sundays. My dad would get the bagels and the lox. Actually, I really liked Sable, kind of expensive now, and hard to come by. And it was a very sweet time in my life. My mom would put on these fairy tale plays, and the whole neighborhood would participate. And my sister was always the evil queen, or the wicked witch. and I was the princess. That was good, I liked it. I liked it a lot, But I think that God, He gives us glimpses, little pieces of the puzzle early on, way before we come to know Him through His Son. And that was a moment in my life, a sweet moment. But we moved when I was 8, and we moved to a very different part of Los Angeles, and culturally very different. And before I had a chance to make some friends and kind of accustom myself to the neighborhood and all, something of a very different nature happened in my life. And we all have these things too. And it was a moment. And in these kind of moments, something happens, and nothing is the same after that moment. And you can never go back to what was, because we always want to go back to what was, but that just isn't the economy of God. It's how we go forward. So I was walking down the street to go catch the school bus, and a man had his dog out. He was a German Shepherd. And I asked all the correct questions. I had a couple of mutts at home. And he said his dog was, safe. And I bent down to pet the dog, and he ripped open my face. And it took 100 stitches to sew my face back together again. And it was never the same. And I was never the same. It took about a month for me to recover and go back to school. And I was the new kid at school, so they gave me a new name, and they called me Scarface. And that name became identity for me for a very long time. Even after I no longer thought about the name, no longer heard the name, no longer thought about it, it informed my choices. It informed the way I saw the world and saw myself, and I made choices that were very damaging to myself, more damaging than that name could ever have been. And yet, words are powerful. We are made in the image of the one who created with words. He chose words. We honor the Torah because the word, you know. But we forget when we speak to one another and we casually say things to one another that we should never say, you know. And you know, funny thing about sound waves, they never stop. Did you know that? They go out of our ability to hear them, but they continue to sound. And I think that when we stand before him, all those words will come before him, you know. I was 27 when I came to the Lord. I was very hostile. I was very angry. I was a loner. I didn't do people. Because, you know, a Scarface is ugly and worthless. And that's how I understood myself. Even though I fought it in myself, it was still how I understood myself. It was what I came back to. And so when I came, I thought I knew who I was, you know. I prayed to ask the Lord into my life at Ahavat Zion on Yom Kippur in 1984. And I was so wounded, you know. And he is so merciful, right? You know. I like the metaphor of clay. You know, I think about what it says in Jeremiah 18 when God sends Jeremiah to the potter's house to look at the clay that's marred and that the potter is putting back on the wheel to shape as he thinks best. And he makes the comment that he can make, you know, that Israel is like clay in his hands. And can he not do with Israel as this potter does with the clay? And I think about it now, and I think we let our clay be in everybody else's hands. I mean, our clay is in our parents' hands, our teachers' hands, our friends' hands, our hands. And yet it's so hard to yield to the hands that are pierced, the hands that are full of mercy. Here am I on your wheel, helpless now to conceal every crack and every scar, every flaw that marked or marred. Slowly now, pump the wheel, touch me with hands that heal, press me in and draw me out, pull me from this shape of doubt. Touch me with your mercy, Master, conform me to your skill, mold me to your making faster. I'll remain on this wheel until I am a vessel of your will. I am clay from my birth, passing shadow on the earth, hardened from the way I walked in, wounded by the sin I'm locked in. I feel tears on my skin, melting me from within. roll this heart of stone away. Make me flesh and blood today. Touch me with your mercy, Master. Conform me to your skill. Mold me to your making faster. I'll remain on this wheel until I am a vessel of your will. High and lifted up you are, exalted with praise. For there is no other name under heaven that saves, under heaven that saves. Touch me with your mercy, Master. Conform me to your skill. Mold me to your making faster. I'll remain on this wheel until I am a vessel of your will. I'll remain on this wheel until I am a vessel of your will. You know, there was a lot I didn't know when I came to the Lord. I was, like I said, I was pretty hostile and very defensive and had a lot of apologies to make after. Of course, apology and forgiveness were a whole issue in itself. I didn't really know too much about that because in my family, nobody really forgave anybody. We were very good at holding grudges forever to the grave, and I'm not kidding about that. I'm not hyperbolizing either. I grew up in a household, in a family. I should say that if Zelda said something that was offensive to Sadie, Sadie would not speak to Zelda ever again. And if, in fact, you were a friend of Zelda's or you were close to Zelda, that included you also. And then if you were a friend of Sadie's, well, then Zelda wouldn't speak to you either, I mean, it just was, it was crazy, we didn't know what forgiveness was. And I remember my mom had a best friend for 30 years, and that friend made a small transgression, and she was never forgiven. But that was the household I grew up in. My father and I had a very difficult relationship. He is a florist for 50 years, and he would work, he was very much a workaholic, and he would work hard like 6 days, and then my mom would stay home with me and my little brother. My sister was already out of the house. She would stay home with, he would stay home with us, sorry. He would stay home with us on Sundays. And she would go to the flower shop. And Sundays were always difficult because my father had a rage problem. And we would at some point ignite that rage. Never meaning to, of course, but my father was frustrated. He was frustrated by us as children a lot. And so he would lose his temper. And you know, when you're a little kid, you don't know anything about high blood pressure or you know, anything else, you know, like where my father came from or anything like that. I just knew I hated him, and I did. I hated him for a very long time. When I got old enough, you know, in my mid-teens, later teens, I used to argue with my father all the time. And I mean long arguments, like 4 hours. I'm not kidding, you know. So I would argue because it was my way of getting back at my father, you know. Words were my weapon. And so, but when I came to the Lord, you know, very early on, had this moment, you know, with my father. And God is very gracious, you know. He takes his time to teach us. So I was sitting with my father one Sunday morning, and we were at my mom's house because they were no longer together, really, although it was fairly amicable. And so we're having a conversation, and I kid you not that every conversation would go to argument. And so the argument is coming, and almost like a cartoon character, there's a part of me that just goes, yes. Yeah, so we'll bring it. You know? And in that moment of recognition that the argument is coming, it's almost as if another voice speaks in my heart. And that voice says, "Is that what your faith is about?" And I'm kind of brought up short, you know. I'm like, I know that's not what my faith is about, but I don't really understand, you know, how that works out. And so I excuse myself and I go into this other room, and there in this other room, you know, God is so gracious to me, and he shows me the humanity of my father. See, I hadn't seen my father's humanity. I was too busy making lists of everything he did wrong. I was too busy listening to the kids of my childhood who called him the monster and would not come over to our house. And so I didn't see the man. And in that moment, God invited me to love the man in the monster. And you know, when I did, well, that was a seed in my father's life. And you know, he came to the Lord when he was 81. And I know it's because we became friends. So this is a song Mike wrote the words to. You know, I couldn't really. I just said, you know, after Dad and I became friends, I said, you know, I think I want to see him. I really want to see him, you know, at the table, at the wedding feast of the Lamb, you know. I was kind of surprised in myself, you know. But yeah, I was just like there, you know. It's like, oh, I want to see my dad there, you know. And so we wrote this song, and it took me a few years to play it for my father, you know. But maybe there's somebody that you love or somebody that you like who doesn't know the Lord, and you could be praying for them as I'm singing this little story, you know. And here's a thought. Maybe there's somebody you don't like. Somebody who's incredibly annoying, or worse, somebody you hate. And he calls you to love, to see with mercy, just as you've received mercy. Maybe you need to be praying for them too. So here we are again, another Sunday dinner. I bought the best rosé that I could find, but the silence, like the bottle breathes between us. We both know I've got much more on my mind. You'd rather sit and talk to me about the weather and how the soaps have lately got you down. But when I start to talk about forever, I know you're getting picture without sound. I just want to see you there. Please don't ask me not to care. I don't want to sit at his table next to an empty chair. I just really want to see you there. I know that you don't really think I'm blind or crazy, though sometimes I believe that I must be. What kind of lunatic throws out all reason and gives her life to someone she can't see? I wish I had more faith so I could just let go, or short of that composure to pretend. But I think the time is short, and yes, I'm scared. I need to know we'll meet again. I just want to see you there. Please don't ask me not to care. I don't want to sit at his table next to an empty chair. I just really want to see you there. So in a quiet moment, won't you ask him if he is real? Then reach out and touch his face. I just want to see you there. Please don't ask me not to care. I don't want to sit at his table next to an empty chair. I just finish with one last song and one last story. And, the Lord planted a seed in my father's heart, which, came from the forgiveness and turned into his salvation. And it was a beautiful and powerful thing in my life. But what I didn't really realize was that he also planted a seed in me. And it took time, because this particular dream that he wove into my DNA, it took time for me to heal enough to be able to receive that dream, to consider that dream, to walk in that good work that he prepared in advance for me to do. We grow up in culture, Jewish culture, Asian culture, Hispanic culture, whatever culture. We grow up with certain protocols that belong to the culture, but they're not necessarily the kingdom. And sometimes the things in our culture clash with the kingdom. And that's what I want you to think about as I'm sharing this. So this is a book I wrote. It's on my table. I'm just going to read you the first chapter. So I grew up with the understanding that being Jewish meant, on some level culturally, that I really didn't ever have to set foot in Germany. That Germany was not a place for a Jewish person to go. And I grew up with that understanding from my mom especially, but also my father, in the way that he treated German people. And but God has a sense of humor, My cousin married a German man, and they became very good buddies. Kadosh. Just the whisper of his voice shivered my soul. The wind curled the last of it away over the tops of what remained of the worn and beaten barracks of Birkenau. Here men and women sweated and stunk, slept and starved together, crying out to their Creator to deliver them. How can this place, of all places, be Kadosh? These grounds are incontrovertible evidence evil exists. How can this place be holy? Kadosh. I heard the rush of sound again, rustling the last autumn leaves on the slim trees near the ruins of the crematoriums. But as I looked into the thick water of the little pools nearby, all I could think was ashes, ashes. We all fall down. Inside the exhibit, there were names and faces, pictures from some other era when people who were marched into this place had laughed, sung, and loved together, married and raised families. Hope was not yet a four-letter word, but a natural fruit of faith, faith in the one true God. I am. How can you be in this place? I am, I was, and I will be. I had not expected this. Tears, anger, fear. There were so many things I thought about as I planned this trip, but I never considered God was here. It was October 2007, and on the grounds where I stood, almost 1 million Jewish people had been exterminated. As I looked out through the gate, I noticed a group of houses staring back at me. Maybe 2 city blocks away, they sat on their cold foundations, facing me without pity. I looked at them, amazed. Windows, curtains, and colors. How could anyone live so close to such a place as Birkenau? Why would anyone choose to raise a family next to a killing field? My friend Evie Hall and I had seen Bergen-Belsen a couple of days before. It was wild and strangely beautiful. Little pink flowers spread their petals between large stone markers numbering the bodies buried there. I wrote in my journal, the forest keeps its own secrets. How old are the trees? Did the blood of victims water some of their roots? The land gives no hint, no evidence, no witness. It grows and flourishes according to God's design, regardless of human history. It is seemingly indifferent to what took place. In Bergen-Belsen, as in Auschwitz-Birkenau, it seemed unjust that any life could flourish in the same soil which received the blood of so many. Places like these should be sentenced to barrenness forever. The very soil rendered incapable of giving the least nourishment for even the basest life. Why should anything green grow in any place where innocence was murdered? It was almost as if the evidence of what happened might be swallowed up in the remorseless flowers and trees that flourished in such places, as if it might be erased entirely if we weren't careful. My heart railed against God. Why doesn't this look like Sodom and Gomorrah? Why should there be any kind of beauty at all in a place like this? The answer came without apology. I am a redeemer. How about you? I am about life. How about you? I went to Germany and Poland in 2007. It was something that I never expected to do. I couldn't even see that, why I would do this. But God began to show me his heart, his heart for the healing of the nations. And that he sees things so differently than we do. We see it through lenses that have been hammered into us through our culture. And he sees with a wide open mercy, And it led to a project, that Rabbi Joshua was talking about. A project I would never have conceived of in myself called A Tour of Roses. We bring roses. We brought roses in 2009 for the first time to Dachau, to the town of Dachau, which has existed since 800 AD. But who knows that? What we know is the camp. So we brought roses to the people of the town of Dachau and the people of the town of Bergen and the people of the town where Auschwitz-Birkenau is. And then we worshiped and we prayed and we interceded in the grounds of the concentration camps themselves. Our roses were big, long stem roses because the love of God is extravagant. It's crazy, his love. How high, how deep, how wide. There's nothing like it. And on each rose there was a card, and it was written in the language of the people. It said, "Red for the blood of the people who died. Red for the Savior's blood, which was shed for all. Red for his perfect love, which removes all fear, making it possible to love one another." We went to Berlin, we went to Warsaw, we went to Nuremberg, we went to Jedwabne, we went to Budapest, we went to Mauthausen, we went to Brussels, and we eventually went to Jerusalem and to Bethlehem. We took 7,500 roses to the Palestinians in 2016. And we saw some of them come and ask Yeshua into their hearts. This year we're going back to Israel in September because the Lord has put on my heart that we would bring roses, something completely impractical, like the alabaster vase. We would bring roses to the broken heart of Israel. Between the dead and dying, amid a war of words, the Prince of Peace is calling. One day he will be heard by all the poor in spirit, the blind who long to see, those who live in darkness, everyone who will believe. Sar Shalom. In the ruin and ashes of dreams left unfulfilled, the voice of God is sounding, stirring all who will rebuild. In long forgotten places, in willing wounded souls, there will be a planting of the hope that makes us whole. Yeshua HaMashiach, Adon HaKavod, desire of the nations, promised one of old. Moshiach HaOlam, he was pierced for our transgressions, his blood bought release. He became our peace. Sar Shalom. Sar Shalom. You walk through the walls we raised up in our hurt and fear, opened eyes and ears, so we could finally see and hear the love that heals the broken heart of man. Yeshua HaMashiach, Adon HaKavod, desire of the nations, promised one of old. Moshiach HaOlam, he was pierced for our transgressions, his blood bought release. He became our peace. Sar Shalom. Sar Shalom. Sar Shalom.
Sally, thank you so much for sharing with us. I hope you were blessed by having Sally with us, and I wish we just had more time to hear more stories, because I know I've been really moved. I shared with her that I've been following her emails of the Tour of Roses because I read the stories and I'm seeing the changes in people's lives and the impact that it's having. And it's easy to be a skeptic, and those of you who know me know I'm incredibly skeptical. What can a bunch of roses do to make a difference in people's lives? But you don't realize that a simple gesture of just hope of anything can have a profound effect on people's lives. Just a smile at a cashier, right? Just a hello to somebody that you pass by. And so I know we don't, normally do this, but if you would like to give in support of the work that, the ministry that Sally and her husband Michael, that they do, and their upcoming tour of roses that they're doing for Israel. You can, give to the synagogue, but just make it out. Let us know what it's for. I don't know, for Sally, the name of her ministry I forgot to mention is Improbable People Ministries. I forgot to mention that. But Improbable People Ministries, but if you want to give, we'll make sure that they get it here. And I know Sally has some of her resources, her books and CDs. And again, I know we don't normally do this, but I feel like this is an opportunity for you to be exposed to the work that they're doing. And so I know, like during the Oneg and everything, that will be available. So